Are you surviving instead of thriving? Jesus promises abundant life, not just existence. Join us for Pray Without Ceasing 2026 on August 15th in Buena Park, California, for a day of restoration, renewal, and reconnection with God. Stop running on empty. Experience the fullness Christ died to give you. Pray Without Ceasing 2026 because you weren't meant to just survive. Register now at praywithoutceasingministries.com. Welcome back to the Leading from Wholeness podcast. I'm Audrey Shelby, your host. So I wanted to share a review today that comes from Terry Lee. Terry says, Audrey's experiences as a leader from a young age bring wisdom and perspective to those of us who want to lead well with a healthy, spiritual, and emotional mindset. I like her insight and tips for working with people and how to continue to grow as a leader. Thank you so much, Terry. We appreciate you. And if you want to leave a review, we can read it on the pod. So please feel free to share your review. You know, it's so funny. The title of this podcast is Leading from Wholeness. And so as I was preparing for the pod and I went through different titles and I knew I had an understanding of what I was supposed to be doing with the pod, but the name, you know, it finally was clear. It was like Leading from Wholeness. And it really is, the goal was about encouraging leaders to lead from a place of fullness, a place of healing, a place of wholeness, so we can walk out our God-given purpose. Like that is the purpose of Leading from Wholeness. And so often when we think about leadership, so many of us are leading from a place of trauma. So we know that 70% of adults have experienced trauma in their lifetime. And from that, we can surmise that the majority of leaders who are in positions, whether you're in the private sector or public sector, have experienced some level of trauma. And so today we're going to talk about how do we work on our healing so that we can lead authentically, so we can lead fully, and we can be fruitful and successful in our businesses and in our organizations. So when we have leaders who are in positions with unresolved trauma, it can lead often to this manifestation of specific behavioral patterns that negatively impact our employees and our organization. In order for us to walk in the fullness that God has called us to, we have to trust God with our healing. And for some of us, that idea may sound very difficult. When I first started leading, I was so focused on my staff liking me, my colleagues liking me. I wanted to be respected and accepted. And what I would discover much, much later, this is years later, is that approach, the way I was leading, was really rooted in rejection. I had been so afraid of not being good enough, not being accepted, what will they think of me, that I couldn't lead from a place of the skill set I already had, the education I already had. I was just so worried that I would be rejected. And so I didn't pick that up in that work environment. I brought that into the environment with me, right? So I've shared before that I am adopted, and my mother, she wasn't able to raise her children and we were adopted. That in itself, like that sacrifice to adopt your siblings' children, like that in itself is just such grace and it's a blessing. And so I'm so grateful that my aunt did adopt me and raised me. And I still was holding on to like this feeling of like somehow something was wrong with me, or somehow I wasn't good enough, that my mother didn't raise me. And so all of that now I know is a lie. But back then I didn't have that revelation, right? I very much so was kind of unconsciously operating from this place of I needed people to accept me. And it fostered this performance type of behaviors, right? So doing things to get people's acceptance. But it really was coming from a place of rejection. What this looked like for me in a workspace was I worked long hours. I would overextend myself beyond what made any kind of sense. I needed things to be perfect. I needed to be perfect. And so I worked so hard and I was so scared of failing, right? I could not fail as this executive. That to me was terrifying, because somehow that would mean that once again, these negative thought patterns were true, that somehow I wasn't good enough if I did fail in this role. And so it also led to me having poor boundaries with my team. I was scared to correct behavioral issues that I was seeing, and not just behavior issues, but performance issues. And so then I was scared of conflict. I was scared to address issues. And it just really was not good. And I was grateful that I had a very strong CEO. And so she would coach me through these things that were for me very difficult, where for maybe for someone else, it wasn't. But because I was so wrapped up in my own thought processes and my own kind of, what would you say, warped perspective, um, that it was limiting my ability to really, execute and execute well. I don't know if any of this is resonating with you, but if it sounds familiar, I just say, quietly just nod your head. No one is looking. Back then, I wasn't praying the way I do now. I wasn't even reading my Bible the way I do now. I mean, honestly, during that season of my life, I was terribly stressed. I was dealing with high functioning anxiety, but worked really hard to kind of mask what was happening with me internally, right? So internally, it felt like chaos. Externally, it was, meeting deadlines, overworking, constantly volunteering for different things to put myself at the forefront so that people would see I was a hard worker and I was serious about my work. But it really was just coming from a place of deficit. I was so focused on performance for so many years. And it would be so much longer before I really understood that I needed to shift. Like I could not maintain at that pace, at that level of work. It was not going to be sustainable, right? And so it wasn't until I began to really look at, okay, how do I make a shift in my life? Because it was no longer healthy for me. It was no longer serving me. And I realized the only way that this was going to change is if I turned it over to God. What I was doing wasn't working. I had to invite him into this chaos that I was trying so hard to manage on my own. And once I started to being honest with God about what I was dealing with, the things that were really kind of keeping me up at night. I was so worried. I didn't sleep. I don't know if the same way. I couldn't sleep. Like my mind would just ruminate and race over and over and over. And I had no peace within me. But once I really was honest with God about what I was dealing with, things started to get better. And it wasn't that my circumstances changed necessarily, right? My job was the same. And the pressures on my job was the same. But it was that God helped me change my perspective on how I was seeing things and not looking at mistakes as a failure, but looking at when I did make a mistake as an opportunity for growth, when I did make a mistake as an opportunity for learning, asking for help as an opportunity to partner with someone else and really kind of leverage the strengths that they brought to the table. Like my whole perspective shifted. And so you may be listening to me and the idea of trusting anyone, right, with the full stress of what you carry, even trusting God, it may feel terrifying. Psalms 25:2 reads, "Oh my God, in you I have unwavering trust, and I rely on you with steadfast confidence. Do not let me be ashamed or my hope in you be disappointed. Do not let my enemies triumph over me." What I had to do and what I'm encouraging you to do is to trust God with the things that you are afraid of. Trust him with the things that you've tucked away. You tucked them away in a closet somewhere. You tucked them away. You've stuffed them down so far beneath the surface that you feel like it may just be getting better. But if you haven't dealt with it, you haven't processed it, you haven't really confronted the pain that you're holding, the trauma that you've experienced, it will rear its ugly head. For me, the idea of trusting God was very hard. I knew God as my Savior through Jesus Christ, but the idea of God as my Lord, meaning I would need to surrender to him and trust him with my life, like my whole life, not just certain parts, not just my work life, not just my, my relationships or not just my family life, but really the idea of trusting God with all of me and surrendering. It was hard for me to understand and to relinquish that control. What I knew from my past was that people had let me down. What I knew from my past is people had hurt me. And so this idea of trusting anyone just did not feel safe. I love God, have always loved God, but I was so scared to let go of control because for me, my control was safety. For me, my control allowed me to do things my way. My control was predictable. I knew what to expect. But on the flip side of that, my control was causing me a lot of anxiety. It was causing me not to have any peace within myself. The truth is, my way of doing things, it hadn't gotten me very far, and nothing I was doing really was working at all. I was just, it was kind of like being on the hamster wheel, just going in circles and circles and not really producing anything meaningful, but working so hard. That's kind of where I was. And so it wasn't until I knew that something needed to change that I had the courage to step forward and invite God into my mess. I remember thinking, I had been through just some different challenges. I was dealing with rejection. I was struggling with my own identity, being adopted, and not really feeling like I was measuring up. Though I had, went to college, had a graduate degree, went to top schools, it still just felt like I wasn't good enough, right? And so I remember thinking at one point, like, maybe I've been through too much to really heal, right? Like maybe I've been through too much to really heal. That was a lie I had been believing for so long, that maybe I was too damaged. But the truth was, when I went to God and really started praying and laying all this stuff out, all my worries, all the things, all my fears, all the things I was scared of, God helped me to see the truth. And the truth was, I had experienced trauma. I had experienced pain. And I was holding on to it. Like I was holding on to my pain. I didn't want to let it go. I felt like, honestly, like, I don't know if this is going to sound weird, but it was like I was entitled to be bitter and I was entitled to be disappointed because I had been through so much. And the truth was, I did go through these things, but God was with me the whole time. Like he was faithful. He was faithfully by my side. Like he got me out of so much mess, like so much mess that I had put myself in. And even in the things that weren't my fault, right? The things where people hurt me and it wasn't my fault. He still protected me. He still shielded me from so much. You know how people say, like, if you look back on it, it could have been worse. It could have been so much worse. It could have been so much worse. Like working in child welfare for 20 years, I've seen so many children who've experienced just extensive trauma, right? And who haven't grown up with their families. I was with my family, even though my mom couldn't take care of us. My aunt adopted me and her and my uncle took such great care of me. And I was literally with my family this weekend, having a good time, celebrating. My cousin is turning 60. And so we celebrated her. And just being I know who my family is. I know who my cousins are, and my sisters and my aunts. And I know my uncle. I know my family. That in itself is a testament to God's faithfulness, that even what the enemy meant to harm me, God still turned it for good. Like, I'm so grateful. I'm in my 40s now. And I'm so grateful that it didn't go a different way. I still have my family. And so there's ways where, if we're willing to be honest with God, we can lay this thing down in prayer and God will start to heal it. And it's not going to happen overnight. Like your healing's not going to be instantaneous. I mean, for some people it is. Some people have stories of like instantly they were changed. That wasn't my experience. My healing took time. And it was little by little that I brought things to God, that he started to work those things through and out of me to a place where I've started to heal. And I'm not perfect. I'm still healing in some areas, but in other areas, I am healed. And God has been faithful to me to carry me through not just the trauma, but through the healing experience. And so I really, really want that for you all today, right? So I learned to trust God by doing one small thing at a time. It was not these huge leaps of faith. It was starting with small things that I would bring to God in prayer and he would answer me. So I remember this one time. So I was a chief of staff to the chief, right? So basically, think of her of like a COO, and I was her chief of staff. So she's second in command. And I had this report due. And so this particular day, it was due by noon. And I had been working on it probably like the week or so prior. And I had to pull data from different leaders in order to compile this report. So this particular morning, the report was due at noon, no biggie. And we started our days early. We started at about 7 a.m. And so I had one component of the report that wasn't done. But I was like, okay, I know they're going to get it to me. I wasn't really too worried. So now fast forward, it's about 9 o'clock. I get a text from my chief and she's like, hey, I need the report by 10. And I'm like, what? And so the director had reached out to her needing the report sooner. So I'm like, oh shoot, it's 9:30. She needs this in 30 minutes, right? This initially was due at noon. So now I only got 30 minutes to get it to her. And I'm like low-key freaking out, right? So I'm like, well, what do I do? Because I don't have this other leader's report. And I remember like, okay, well, maybe I should text her. And so this was a big faux pas. So this was a thing that was known amongst all like the executive administrative team. It was you don't reach out to the execs on their personal cell phones. Like that was a big no-no. And so I'm like, okay, well, I can't text her or call her. Like that's a big faux pas. Don't do that. So I'm like, well, maybe I'll email her, right? And I'm running through my head like, can I get the data some other way? Is there a way to maybe get to her assistant to get the data? But nothing really made sense. And I remember I was so like, I had gotten myself into this like catastrophizing of worry. And I was so overwhelmed that I began to cry. Like I'm literally crying. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to get the support done. And what if I lose my job? And I literally was catastrophizing. Like that's what it was. I was going to like the extremes of what could happen. And so after all of that, I remember maybe I should pray about it. So I started to pray and I asked God, I said, God, help me. I don't know what to do. The support's due in 30 minutes and I don't have the data. And I remember after I prayed, I was like, okay, I'm going to just email her. Like, that's what I resolved. I'm going to email her. I opened up Outlook and I start to draft a new email. And all of a sudden, as I open up the new message box, I hear the Holy Spirit whisper, wait. And I said, okay. So I stopped. I just stopped typing altogether. All of a sudden, I hear a ding. And so if you all have Outlook, you know what I'm talking about. If you have your notifications on, when you get a new email, there's a ding sound, like this little ring, a bell. And so I heard the little ding and I opened it up and guess what it was? It was that leader. And she emailed and she said, hey, Audrey, I'm so sorry. We were having some issues trying to clean up some data, but the report's ready. So sorry I'm late. Here it is attached. That came in like at 9:45, 15 minutes before the report was due. I took her report, compiled it with the rest of everybody else's pieces, and sent that over to my boss by 10 a.m. as requested. The amount of fear that was running through my mind was ridiculous. Like it really was crazy. This is how faith is built, by one thing to the next, from one thing to the next. That's how you build faith. It's these little steps, little steps of obedience, little steps of trusting God. And in that moment, my little step was, I'm going to pray and ask God to help me with this email. I don't know what to do. I'm scared. And what he told me was wait. And I did that. I waited. When I tell you, it wasn't even a minute. It was a few seconds after I heard God say, wait, that I heard that ding and that email came in. And that is really how faith is built. It's one small thing after the next, after the next. That's how I started learning to trust God, was to just give him small things. Now, God can handle anything we have going on. It was more about me. I didn't want to relinquish that control. But I really came to the point of recognizing that what I was doing, it just wasn't working. Okay, so now what do we do? So how do you know if trauma is shaping the way you lead? So here are 3 common executive trauma responses. The first one is hyper-controllership. So this is a deep fear of vulnerability. You don't want people to know what's really going on. You really kind of keep it to yourself. It often leads to micromanagement, which I have been a micromanager. There is this strong resistance to delegate and aggressive responses to mistakes. So this may be you don't delegate at all. You don't want to. You want everything to be done by you because you know if you do it, it'll be done correctly. And it's this fear that if you give it to someone else, they're going to make a mistake. And then the aggressive responses to mistakes is things like getting overly angry. Maybe you're yelling at your staff. Maybe you are CCing the entire world on emails and shaming folks and coming down on them for making a simple mistake. It's having no grace for people, right? That's a part of that hyper controllership. The second one is workaholicism. Is that a word? Workaholicism, right? So this is this compulsive overworking. It's often used as a trauma-based coping mechanism to avoid self-reflection. You're trying to avoid slowing down. This oftentimes leads to burnout among leaders and their staffs. My therapist asked me once, what would happen if you actually slowed down? And what I knew in that moment, what I knew to be true, was that if I actually slowed down, I would have to feel the pain that I had been desperately trying to shove down and to press past. And for some of us, being a workaholic and never stopping, it feels safer than really slowing down and admitting that we're not okay. And remembering that we've been through some trauma and remembering that we've had some hard things that we haven't processed, that we haven't dealt with. And also admitting that we need help. Asking for help is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength. If we slow down, we probably could really take good care of ourselves, doing basic stuff like sleeping and eating, just doing the basic things. But that workaholism or workaholism, it really is. It's a trauma response that's meant to help us to continue to avoid dealing with our pain. So the third one is impaired decision making. This is where trauma disrupts the brain's stress regulation. There's a lot of research about the nervous system and self-regulation. And so when we've experienced trauma, it impacts our decision making. And so this can lead to executives choosing short-term, risk-averse strategies over really innovative solutions. I always like to say, don't make long-term decisions based on short-term circumstances. And when we're coming from a place of trauma, we can make a quick decision that long term is not healthy for the organization because we're responding out of a place of fear and unresolved needs. So those are the three common executive trauma responses. When we're in these places of leadership, we have been given great responsibility. God has given us great responsibility. So the thing about leadership is whether you're leading 2 people or you're leading a team of 10,000, God has entrusted those people to your care. And so as leaders, we are supposed to pour into people. But oftentimes, a lot of us are trying to pour from a cracked cup. So think about if you have a coffee mug and it's cracked through and through. If you fill it up with coffee and try to drink from it, the coffee's going to do what? It's going to leak right out. And so that's true for some of us. We're trying to pour from a broken cup, and our pain is literally leaking out all over people. And it's time for us to get a new cup. But I think we're so afraid of what healing looks like. I think we're so afraid to deal with the stuff that we'll just continue with the broken cup and hope that we get enough filling of the coffee for the day. But reality is it's not going to be enough. Okay, so how do you start to trust God with your healing? I'm going to walk you through 5 things I want you to work on this week, okay? So the first one is go back and look at that common executive trauma response list. I'll also make sure it's in the show notes. I want you to identify one area that's currently showing up in your leadership. Not the way you used to be. What's showing up currently in the way you lead? Then after you've identified that one area, I want you to pray. I want you to pray and ask God, where is the root of that behavior or that thought process coming from? He will reveal it to you. I remember this was maybe a year or 2 ago. I think I was praying. I don't know if I was praying. I was reading my Bible. I was doing something. Something happened in the quiet time. And God revealed to me that I had started believing this lie that no one was going to take care of me and I had to take care of myself. that was solely from a place of rejection. But the only way I got that revelation was sitting down with God and praying to Him about the things that were showing up for me. Because He is the one who knows the truth. Jesus is the truth, the way, and the life. He is the one that will bring that revelation to you. But if we don't slow down enough to sit down and pray and bring our concerns to God, we won't get to tap into that revelation because we're not slowing down long enough to hear Him. As you're writing this list, pray and ask God, what is the root of that behavior? Number 4, I want you to write down one area of your career that you've been trying to carry on your own. One area of your career that you've been trying to carry on your own. And then lastly, I want you to take that area that you wrote down and pray about it this week and ask God to help you carry it or help you lay it down. It may be either God's going to help you shoulder that thing or He may want you to lay it down altogether. But ask Him this week. And this is a thing. Don't pray once. I really want you to pray about this multiple times. That's what it means to pray without ceasing. It is bringing our petitions before God consistently over and over, in season and out of season, when we feel like praying and when we don't, when life is going good and when life is hard. You're always bringing your cares to God. That's how we pray without ceasing. And if this is newer to you and you want to, you want some support with establishing a sustainable prayer life, I encourage you to grab my book, Pray Without Ceasing, 31 Days in Prayer. It's available everywhere where books are sold. So Walmart, Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, but it will give you 31 days of structured prayer prompts. I share a little bit about my life and my story. It has reflection section and mindful coloring and an actual prayer section. So I really would encourage you to grab that. That'll help walk you through a 31-day process so you can really build the habit of prayer. So just understand, you don't need to come to God perfect, right? I share with you, I was a mess. And even sometimes now I'm still messy, right? But God has been faithful to walk with me through it. And I just want you to know that it doesn't matter what you've gone through. God is with you and He loves you so much and He wants to be there with you. He wants to heal you and He wants to get you out of that place of broken. Broken was never God's design. That came from the enemy. He wants us to be whole. He wants us to be healed. And I just really encourage you, no matter where you find yourself today, no matter what you've gone through, it doesn't matter who broke you. It doesn't matter how you've been broken. God can heal you and He wants to heal you. And so you need to come to Him. Come to Him now. Stop assuming that you have more time. So often we think we have more time than we do. It's okay. It don't have to be pretty, but bring it to Him. Bring it to Him now so that He can heal you, so that you can fully walk out and lead the way He has intended you. Throughout my life, God has been faithful and He's been consistent, even when I'm not consistent, even when I forget to read my Bible, even when I forget to pray. He has always been there with me, faithfully showing up as a loving Father, as a loving counselor, as a loving God to tell me, daughter, go this way. Go this way. This is the way that you should go. Protecting me, shielding me, even shielding me from my own foolishness. Like, God is dope. Like, I don't know. I don't know, that doesn't sound very spiritual, but it is. God is so dope and He is so loving. And so He has been faithful to me in healing me and from getting out of that place of holding on to my disappointments. And so I just encourage you to start today. I want you really to learn how to give God your problems because He has the capacity to handle it. So start with the little stuff. Give those little things, bring them to God in prayer. If He can help me through getting a report done, He can help you through whatever the thing is that you want to bring to Him. He will help you resolve the problems and give you peace within. So here's to your healing journey. I am so proud of you for showing up for you today. Healing is hard work, but it's good work, and it will be worth it. I'll see you next week. If this episode blessed you today, please share it with a friend. Tag me on social at Audrey T. Shelby. I will see you back here again soon.